when you're doing initial butcher like this. I wait until I'm ready to take that piece of meat out of the freezer, and I'm getting ready to cook it up. Then I cut individual steaks. I cut it into cubes if I'm going to make a stew or something like a little batch of chunk of meat that I could make into, well, let's see, I did chili last week. Cut up some deer meat that I had. I made a fresh chili out of it that came out freaking fantastic. Other than a little bit of tendon right here, that once I cut this up, this chunk here, again, you can cut it up into steaks. You want to cut across the grain, not with the grain. Make little steaks out of it, or you can cut it up into chunks and make a stew or a chili or something like that. At that point, I'll come back in, I'll take this piece off, and I'll take this tendon out because this is also very tough. This boy's got a lot of fat in him.
I wonder why when you do a deer, the smell when you gut it out, that smell disappears after 4 days of being refrigerated.
Really?
Yep.
Yes,
Wow.
it disappears.
That's really cool.
And that's a sign that the enzymes in the meat is doing its job.
Wow.
Breaking down the protein.
See another thorn in there.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of science to how this works. You talk to any chef and he will tell you the science of how the enzymes and the protein chains in meat are and what you have to do to create a tender piece of meat. And it's all because of science. It's nothing to do with, well, I've done this for years, I've learned it this way. No, there's science behind all of this. And if you don't understand science, you better pay attention to what somebody else is doing and learn how he's doing it, and not really questioning why he's doing it. Just pay attention to what he's doing. It's one of the things I learned when I became a medic, is I learned how muscles are. I've learned anatomy. I mean, a good butcher is going to understand anatomy. It's another good chunk. I tended to make chunks into roughly a pound, unless it's a specific muscle. I'll keep the muscle whole. But typically I run a pound of meat per package. That way I have it portioned out. I don't have to guess how much. So if I've got a specific recipe I'm going after, or I'm feeding a certain amount of people, I can grab 4 packages and I know I've got a roughly 4 pounds of meat, because that's about what I'm going to need to feed, say, 15 people. It's just simple math that way. "10 minutes of prep here saves you 2 hours of prep down the road." See this? Separation of one muscle layer with another. We'll put this in a package by itself. I'll call it tidbits, like I said before. And that's pretty much as simple as it is for breaking down one ham leg on a javelina. Now, obviously with deer, you're going to deal with bigger muscles, have better steaks. But I tell everybody on my pages, my Facebook pages, that say javelina isn't good for anything but burritos or chorizo, and I tell them they're full of it. A prime example of that is I took some javelina meat that I aged in a refrigerator for 14 days, and I took it right alongside some javelina meat that I aged for 21 days. And I fed it to a couple of guys that have never had javelina. And I cooked it on the grill right next to a mule deer. And they couldn't tell me the difference. Now, naturally, because I've been doing this for eons now, I can tell the difference. I could tell the difference between a 14-day aged piece of meat and a 21-day aged piece of meat.
21 days is beef.
Yeah.
21 days in a controlled environment, wrapped in a sheet, wet down, 21 days at 36 degrees at 50% humidity. That is what they do beef. If you want good beef.
If you want good beef. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to have either no taste or it's going to be on the tough side.
That is typically what you get at Safeway and Fry's, places like that, those standard